Salvete sodales, ecce magister ca. Bene vinistis ad School of Latin. This video will help you to get the most out of your School of Latin course. If you're a student and you're watching this alone, please pause the video now and go get a parent because you just can't climb Mount Parnassus alone. You need someone else to push you and to hold you accountable. In this video, I'll do my best to explain everything that you should do to be successful in this class. And the first on that list is managing your time. This class is designed to meet the high school world language requirements of my students. So even if you're taking this course before high school, you'll need to set aside an hour a day for Latin. If you don't know why Latin deserves that amount of time, please see my video introducing School of Latin, or do an internet search for reasons to study Latin. Don't begin studying Latin until you're fully committed. Latin is equal to math and second only to the Bible as the most important subject in your school day. For that reason, Latin should also be one of the first 3 subjects in your daily routine. Skill-based subjects like Latin should always be scheduled early in the day when the mind is freshest and most adept at facing difficult challenges. Besides time and personal commitment, your success in Latin also depends upon having the right resources. So you'll need to set aside a space in your home where you'll keep the materials that you'll be using on a regular basis. A computer with an internet connection, your Lingua Latina textbook, and your workbook that you printed from the School of Latin site. The rest of your success depends upon your hard work and discipline in the class. There's a daily routine that you'll need to follow without leaving out any of the carefully planned steps. Remember, there are no shortcuts to learning. Now let's quickly walk through the activities that you'll be completing in Chapter 1 of your book. These activities are also typical of later chapters. Begin by opening your workbook, your textbook, and your website page to Chapter 1, Lesson 1. Notice that the first activity is to sing a song. Every day begins with a song. If you've already memorized the Latin grammar using School of Latin's lower school program, these songs will reinforce what you've already learned. If you've memorized Latin grammar using the modern American case order, these songs will help you to learn the traditional English and European order that is used in your textbook. If you've never learned Latin grammar, these songs will teach you the forms that you need to know. Sing the weekly song every day at the beginning of your lesson. It gets the blood flowing and prepares your mind for the work ahead. The word endings are critically important in Latin, and these songs will help you to learn them. After the song, your website page reminds you that it's time to recite the text. You may choose to record your recitation or document your learning for your parent or teacher. Or you may be on the honor system to recite the lines aloud and check the box on your own. Either way, remember that the lines must be read aloud. Your workbook will tell you which lines you need to recite. You can see that for Chapter 1, Lesson 1, you need to recite lines 1 through 4. At first, your pronunciation of Latin will not be very good. So your greatest opponent will be fear and hesitation. Even after the pronunciation lessons at the beginning of this course, you'll need to build your confidence. So it's critically important that your recitation be done out loud every day. Speaking and hearing the words daily will reinforce your understanding of the language and your language instincts, particularly concerning the correct endings of Latin words. After the recitation, it's time to translate. You'll be translating the same lines that you just recited. This is not a typical translation, though, if you've ever done any translating before. This translation is an exercise in inference, not in decoding, which means that you'll use context clues, images, derivatives, and margin notes rather than a grammar or dictionary to make your best guesses about what the text means. This is the heart of the powerful natural method powering the Lingua Latina per se illustrata texts. It's by far the most difficult to master, but also the most useful and transferable of the skills that you'll acquire by studying Latin. Let's practice with the first lesson. Take a look at Chapter 1, Lesson 1 in your textbook. Notice the map on page 6 showing the city of Rome in the middle of Italy. Now let's begin by translating the first sentence. Roma in Italia est. We can see both Roma and Italia on the map. We can see that Roma in Italia est. What do you think that means? Where is Roma? Where is Italia? Can you guess what Roma in Italia est means? Hopefully you're able to infer that Roma means Rome and that Italia means Italy because of their English derivatives, Rome and Italy, and their locations on the map. Maybe you could also guess that in means in this context, given the fact that the map clearly shows that Rome is in the country of Italy, and because of the identical word in English, in. So now you can read that Rome in Italy est. Now maybe you're very clever and you've already figured out that the sentence says Rome is in Italy. You figured out that Latin likes to put the verb at the end of a sentence, similar to the way that Yoda talks in the Star Wars movies. Rome in Italy is. If you figured it out, go ahead and write your translation in your workbook. Let's say, however, that you just couldn't figure out the meaning of est or some other word, no matter how carefully you examine the pictures and the context. What would you do? In that case, you would translate the words that you could figure out and leave the words out that you couldn't figure out, trying your best to put them in typical English word order. English order usually begins with a subject followed by the verb. For example, Rome, subject, is verb. So for your translation, you would write Rome est in Italy, and then you would write est in the margin on the right. You're going to figure out what est means in just a little bit. For now, just leave it blank. At this point, you would move on to infer the meaning of the next sentence. Italia in Europa est. Your entire free translation proceeds thus, without consulting any outside resources. At the end of the translation, you will have an English translation on the left side with several untranslated Latin words or gaps and a list of unguessable words like est in the margin on the right. Now it's time to check your work. To do that, listen to the English translation of the passage you just attempted to translate. Correct your translation by filling in the gaps and defining your margin notes. For example, after listening to the translation, you know that the first sentence in the textbook means Rome is in Italy. So you fix your translation and you define est as is in the margin. In other words, est equals is. Parents, take a look at this example of a correct student translation in the workbook. Notice how there are corrected gaps or undefined words in the translation and that the unknown words are defined in the margin. If this is not what you see in your child's workbook, please check with your child to ensure that this is done correctly. After your translation, it's time to practice speaking. Speaking Latin is fun and puts you in an elite group of individuals around the world who practice this rare skill. Speaking Latin will also improve your ability to write and read Latin, which may be a little more practical if a little less fun. The website will provide a link to the correct conversation, and the workbook will tell you the number of minutes for this activity, usually around 10 minutes. Your only job during the conversation is to speak and take notes. At all times, you should be speaking or writing. If you aren't speaking, then you should be writing. And if you aren't writing, then you should be speaking. There's no downtime. There's no passive listening. The recording should rarely, if ever, be stopped. If you write down only half of a sentence or idea in your notes, that's fine because everything will be repeated at least 6 times as the conversation progresses. So if you miss something, you'll have a chance to write it down later. Remember that the main point of the conversation is to practice speaking Latin, not to practice taking notes. The notes are just a tool to aid in memory as your conversational skills grow. To recap the basic rules of the guided conversations: 1. If you know it, speak it. 2. If you don't know it, write it. 3. If you don't have enough time to write it, don't fret it because you're going to hear it again. After your conversation, it's time for double translation. Double translation takes your English translation and turns it back into Latin. To do this, take a look at your corrected English translation. The first sentence is, Rome is in Italy. For your double translation, you'll translate that sentence back into Latin. Don't worry about the word order, but do pay close attention to the endings. Here are some examples of correct sentences. Roma in Italia est. In Italia, Roma est. And Roma est in Italia. Those are all correct because they only vary the word order. But Roma in Italia sunt would be incorrect because it changed a word. Also, Romam in Italiam est would be wrong because it changed the endings. Consult the book to correct your mistakes in word choice and in word endings, but never in word order. Congratulations on completing one session in your workbook. Hopefully that took you just a little more than 30 minutes to finish. If not, no worries, because you'll definitely get faster with practice. You'll need to complete an average of 5 or 6 sessions each week to stay on track in this class. So you'll need to plan accordingly. In other words, for 2 days of each school week, you're going to need to complete 2 sessions on those days. For example, you could double up your sessions on Monday and Wednesday and keep single sessions on Tuesday and Thursday, or vice versa. Of course, you can alter this schedule to suit your own homeschooling needs. After completing all the weekly sessions, it's time for you to review the lesson's vocabulary and to make sure that you remember it. The website has a link for flashcards for this lesson. It's very important for you to learn the vocabulary words not only from Latin to English, in other words, fluvius means river, but also, and more importantly, from English to Latin. River is fluvius, fluvii, masculine in Latin. Just before completing the exercises for the weekly lesson, you'll need to recite the entire lesson out loud. You may choose to record yourself reading or simply do this on the honor system. On average, it'll take you 3 to 5 minutes to recite the entire lesson. You'll be reading the same sections that you read in sessions 1 through 6, but if you get lost, the Roman numerals in the margin will help you to figure out where to begin and where to end. After your recitation of the lesson, it's now time to practice your skills with writing Latin using the online exercises which are linked to the website. You'll start by watching the tutorial video explaining how to do the exercises, and then you'll try the exercises themselves. Hints are provided, and you can attempt the exercises as many times as necessary to gain mastery. You're encouraged to try the exercises without using any resources, but you can use a dictionary and the book to solve difficult problems. After the exercises, it's time to take a short grammar quiz testing the endings covered in the weekly song. You should repeat the quiz as often as necessary until you achieve 100%. Congratulations on completing 1 week of School of Latin. The cycle of singing, reciting, translating, speaking, correcting, memorizing, exercising, and quizzing repeats itself weekly for each lesson. Most chapters contain 3 lessons. The 4th week is dedicated to a grammar lesson, review activities, and a chapter test. So let's take a quick look at a chapter test week to see how it differs from a typical lesson week. You'll prepare for the chapter test by studying a review set of flashcards, reciting the entire chapter, reading the appropriate chapter in the Familia Romana Companion, and completing the final exercises called pensa. Pensum means assignment in Latin, while pensa is the plural meaning assignments. The pensa, or assignments, are 4 online review assignments covering the chapter's grammar, that's pensum A, the vocabulary, pensum B, the sentences, pensum C, and the syntax, pensum D. When you're done with the review activities, you're ready for the chapter test, which is a 40-question multiple-choice assessment of all the vocabulary, grammar, and syntax contained in the chapter. It's similar in format to the National Latin exam and serves as good preparation for that test. Questions missed on the chapter test should be documented in the workbook, researched in the textbook, and then corrected. After correcting mistakes, the test should be retaken without resources until a minimum score of 80% is achieved. After a successful chapter test, you'll be ready to move on to the next chapter. Thanks for watching this tutorial video. If you follow the steps outlined above, you're going to have great success in your Latin studies. If you do get stuck though, just go to the School of Latin website and click on the chat button. We're here to help. Bene valete omnes.